heart of midlife crisis. Not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives, obviously. What up, folks? We're back. Midlife crisis here. It's a Tuesday, starting of the week. We are freaking excited. We are not going to do Twitter Spaces because it's a pain in my ass, and I keep on doing it, and no one shows up to watch. So we're going to solve that problem by doing our Twitter Space. Gonna shoot for Fridays. Maddie and I are gonna talk about awesome shit for an hour, but it's only gonna be an hour. It's not gonna be 3 hours of conversation like we're about to have. So it'll be a new fun format for us to mess around. But shit, man, we already got double-digit people in chat. People must like Galaxy of Color and Rich, man. You're popular, dude. This chat's popping already, man. Maddie, how you doing?
Dude, life is good, but I'm tired. Tired. Last week's been very, very busy. You know those days where like you wake up and you have stuff to do immediately and you do that till you go to bed? It's those days, you know. They're fun, they're productive, get a ton done, and I'm excited about it, but I'm just physically I'm pretty wiped.
Wow.
But I'm looking forward to it, man. Not for long. Not for long.
Dude,
Gonna
big
get to
life
that Florida
changes.
sun.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Dude, you're going to be in the sun. You're going to be in the warm weather. You're going to be hanging out with friends. And, dude, you're going to be a blast. Dude, Maryland, I can leave it. I can, it's a passable state. Let's be honest. So you're going to have a good time. I'm excited for you, man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. How about you, man? How have you been? How's everything going?
I wish I could tell you the full story of how my dad got scammed today, but we'll have to do an internet video on that. Rich.
Yeah.
My dad got scammed out of $13,000 today. And there is no way he's getting it back. And I can't go into the story because it's way too long to explain. Just let's say it's the most ludicrous story you'll ever hear. We'll do a video about it, but I feel really bad for him at the same time. It's like, man, dude, you're an idiot. It's a rough story.
And this has nothing to do with what it is, but it's like, you did not find, he was not a Nigerian prince, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean? And it's just like, oof.
I'll leave it at this. He didn't click on a link. It wasn't like that simple, right? Like, because anybody can do that. This dude went to the bank and withdrew hard cold cash.
He made mistakes. Mistakes were made.
But that's what happens when you got a dad in the 70s. I feel really bad for him. And it looks, he's going to be eyeing down a part-time job, I think, is the reality.
And Mike, you said it too. I mean, the reality is this. I mean, we're in a space that is rife with like peril. That'll be my euphemism. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, people can get hurt pretty easy in this space. And so we genuinely do feel for them. And the problem is that there are these people out here that have skill sets and they prey upon and I'm just going to say the ignorant in its truest form, right?
Right.
You know, I wouldn't know half the stuff. And if I wasn't guided through a lot of these things, the minting process, if you're new to this, if you're new to Web3 or trying to get an NFT, it's daunting. You're like, wait, what do I do? How do I connect my wallet? You know, and you see a website and you assume, oh, connect wallet. What can be, you know, what's the issue? And so we all feel for it, but it's just tough because, especially people who are older, it's just a different generation, man. You used to be able to conduct business, and if somebody called you and said something, they meant what they said.
Yeah.
And now you have to almost immediately assume whoever's on the other end is not being honest, and you have to proceed accordingly. And it's sad. It's a
Yeah.
sad state, honestly.
I mean,
It's a sad
listen, I
state.
think Star wrapped it up with a very concise text. I think all scammers should come back as slugs in Next Life. I'm
No,
totally down
no,
with that.
it's not concise enough. I will help them come back as that slug. That's what needs to happen. That needs to be accelerated.
Maddie's got the arsenal to make that happen.
Yeah, that's the real truth. Is let's speed up that slug
Well,
process.
let's
Anyway.
move on from down to good because we got a sweet ass guest tonight. And before that, I just want to shout out we got some first time chatters. Matt, welcome to the show. Happy to see you here. Dubstep in the house. He's the man giving away the beautiful free Galaxy Color NFT today. We cannot wait. Thank you for doing that. Dubstep's one of our OGs. Stargirl should not be typing on her computer. She is hurt, recovering from surgery, but she's already back when she said she was going to take a couple days off. But that's what she does.
She took a couple days. She's on a laptop.
Days.
She's all right.
Meta Sculptor, E-Man, we love you all. Thanks for being here. Bonji just chimed in. Yeah. Our firefighter from NYC just showing the love. But with that being said, let's introduce our highly esteemed guest, Rich. Got a couple background information like we like to do it here at Midlife and do the introductions. First off, Rich is a licensed CPA. And for the last 15 years, he's been working with hedge funds in the financial district sector. And then the fun fact. So what's going to be cool about Rich is we're going to get the numbers side. We get a lot of the creative, we get entrepreneur side, but I don't think we had like a hardcore numbers person yet. So it'll be a fun conversation. But listen, he's not all numbers because he has some interesting tidbits like this. He tried out for Survivor and apparently it went really bad. And he froze in front of the camera. And I can't wait to talk about that little tidbit. And then second, this is one of the more interesting notes we've had. His wedding rehearsal was recorded and shown on the Food Network because of a reality show. Don't know the name of it, but we can talk about that too. Rich, welcome to the show, brother. Thanks for coming by.
How are you guys?
Dude. Amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Actually, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude.
Now, I do want to get into this whole Food Network thing. Just real quick, just we'll get into it. But like, was it because the food you had at your rehearsal dinner was that like on fire?
Yes,
bro.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about this.
So the restaurant, yeah. The restaurant was
dude. Survivors for the birds, bro. You were on the Food Network for your rehearsal dinner. You totally outdid yourself. You're fine. Totally redeemed yourself.
I was gonna exactly what Maddie said. I'd much rather be on the Food Network because of my fire ass rehearsal dinner than Survivor dealing with all that bullshit, dude.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that one.
Yeah, winning.
But we're really glad to have you, and like we said, we'll get through that. But this is it, man. It is game time. World famous, and it is world famous. And if it's not right now, it will be, I promise you. The midlife crisis question. Dude, how'd you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. And to reiterate that, 1 would be the childhood up to the professional career. 2 will be professional career. And 3 will be finding Web3 and beyond. So let's have it, bud. Can't wait to hear it.
All right. Born and raised New York, Staten Island originally.
Ooh, we got a firefighter, New York firefighter in the house in chat, bro.
Exactly, I heard it. So I'm local still. I'm in Jersey, but born and raised in New York, and really have been here my whole life.
Nice.
Right. Grew up, went to school, played a lot of basketball, a lot of basketball.
Okay.
My day, right? So, for somebody again a little bit older in NFTs, grew up at a time where we were all just playing in the street from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m, right? That was my life for, I don't know, again in New York, like had 20 kids either on my street or around the corner from me. Wake up early. Everybody
Dude,
was outside of the 2 basketball hoops, and that's what we did for 12 straight hours.
these kids nowadays don't understand how magical that was. Wasn't that a magical
Dude.
time?
Yes,
I
it was.
mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. I
did
look back
you-
at that and I just think all the
Crazy
time.
lessons. Yeah,
Dude,
crazy
so Maddie
lessons,
and I
too.
have known each other since 4th grade. And I used to go knock on his door to ask his mom if he could play. Did you do that with your buddies?
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you literally would come out of the house and whoever was first would just walk down the block and ring, and maybe run, maybe stay,
Yeah.
and then walk to the next one, ring, 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 and get everybody out. And in 30 minutes you had 2 teams of basketball like ready to go. Which was
Yeah.
incredible.
Oh, bro, that warms
I
my
love
heart that you understand
love it.
how magical that was. Okay,
Yeah.
so knocking on doors, playing basketball 10 hours a day. What else do you got for us?
I don't know. Was never really a good student. Like always got decent grades, but was never really a good student.
Mhm.
Right? Never really understood the art of working hard because
Mhm.
things came pretty easy, to be honest.
Mm.
Like through grammar school, through high school, wasn't totally challenged. Maybe didn't push myself hard enough. Um, but again, just didn't really get the art of working hard until much later in life.
Right.
Always was aggressive with like other things though, right? And so this will sort of tie in later, but always wanted to be or find something that was a passion and never took the thing I was doing as my be all end all of, school is the most important thing. Like that was never it for me, right? I was selling lollipops or flipping basketball cards. Like that was more my speed than
I like that.
studying,
We can
than
relate.
studying.
Talk to us more about
12
that.
hours
Like,
a day.
where do you think that came from? Why are you flipping cards and lollipops while everyone else is looking at books?
I was just always looking for, that next thing to sort of drive attention, right?
Okay, that's an interesting way to
Sometimes
put
it was
it.
about $1. Like sometimes it was about $1. Sometimes it was about attention. Like a lot of times it was probably about attention.
Ah, see,
Hmm.
you're interesting because
Interesting.
most people that say, because we've had a lot of people say the same thing, it was always about money, but I like this attention. So take us down that road a little bit. You,
Yeah,
you
I
think
mean,
that was a lot of the evolution of just the attention, or just take us through that journey? That's interesting to me.
yeah, definitely. I think the attention is twofold, right? One is like, do I like spotlight? Sure. Two is then more importantly is like what was driving other people's attention, right? Like what was of interest to the crowds during all of these periods of time. So
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
was more for me like what that's about.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So flipping lollipops, cards. Where do we go next?
I mean high school sort of quiet, right? Had
Well,
mostly friends outside of school. So like had a couple friends inside of school, but always like grew my own crowds. Um, you know, summer camps, all these other things that you did, sleepaway camps, and just sort of like grew my own crowds around what I was doing. And frankly, who the 1, 2, 5 bespoke people from each given place that really blended with me.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And so even now, like I'll call it, my tightest group of friends, my guys that I grew up with, they're all sort of one from here, one from here, one from here, and are actually a pretty tight knit group of friends because we all sort of just blended together.
Yeah,
Right.
for
Right.
sure.
Maddie, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, one is you answered. I was gonna say, was that just based on because it was such an urban area that you could do that easily, because like where we were from, man, I mean, if you didn't go to our high school, you were far away. So it was not very easy
Right.
to do that. But I never really thought about that. Like you don't necessarily have to have friends that go to your school, but you can still hang out and play.
Yeah.
Um, what were some of the influences, would you say, like before high school? What were some of the things you looked up to, or would you say were kind of like motivating factors? Was it just as simple as your parents? Were there any like specific figures in your life that you think were influences or like kind of hero figures for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you dragged it back. Thank you. My grandparents, I didn't get into this, but my grandparents lived in my house born and raised in like a very, very tight family of,
Yeah.
so actually divorced parents, my mom and her parents all lived in my house.
Oh,
So I grew
wow.
up, mom working, grandparents pretty much raised me. My grandfather worked for, probably the first 10 or 12 years of my life, but then also
Hmm.
retired, obviously.
Right.
And he was a huge, huge influence in sort of everything I did.
That's awesome.
Um, you don't live with many regrets, but that's the one I'll hang my hat on forever. Of he was just like the ultimate handyman, right? Like the ultimate. This is not a day and age where he YouTubed something and figured out how to change a toilet. Like he just did
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and um, that's the one that I hang my hat on for like ultimate regret, I would say. But he just did everything, and then like not even just on the handyman side, but everything. Took me to practices, just sort of did the everything role for me
That's
in the
really
house.
cool.
Yeah. What was the
Yeah.
actual regret? I guess I missed that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just not having more time to, again, like I said about school and sort of like not giving it that full credit of like probably take more time, learn how to work hard. With him, it was like should have probably spent time learning the things that he knew.
Got it. So
Just
just
Mm,
not
learning
being
electric,
mentored by
just
him
being a
more.
handyman. Like I'm not a very handy person around this house.
Yeah.
And don't let my wife hear that upstairs. So,
Hmm.
uh, but definitely, not the most handy. So that's
Got it.
definitely a regret. And then my grandmother, totally opposite, but like very, very motherly. Like sat, did homework with me when I was very young. Like
right.
cooked dinners every night, took care of me. Really was that figure in my life. And like later on, as I progressed through life, really was that like defining force of like even when the past starts to stray
Hmm.
into later into grammar school, into high school, etc. Like we know you're good, we know you can do this, stay on track,
Right.
and really always sort of brought that focus back, right?
Yeah.
She was always the focus person. She always just brought it back for me.
Yeah.
Just grab the cheek so I didn't like look you in the eye and be like, bring it back now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So,
like that.
And I'm assuming your mom's just working hard, trying to make
mom was a
money
grinder,
throughout
yeah.
the whole time, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
getting
mom was
bills
a
paid.
grinder. Mom was a grinder my whole life. So, worked in finance actually, like worked for brokerage firms my whole life.
Oh,
But, high school degree, no college degree, and just like made it happen.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, ultimately respect her, what she did for us. Like just always worked hard and then also took the time to spend with us, right? Like summers this, like now it's easy for me. Like I take almost no vacation, which is like horrible having two kids.
Yeah.
But she always made the time to take us out, do, I'll call them excursions, whatever it is, something, take a week
Yeah.
at the beach, visit friends, everything. So,
That's awesome,
uh,
dude. So what
yeah, yeah, yeah.
looking obviously your grandparents had a huge influence on you as well as your mom. Any like insights or things that you go back to that they taught you that you're like, man, this has really just helped me grow into who I am today?
I think it's funny because it's all going to come back to this, but it just comes back to like the work hard thing, right? And it's sort of the light bulb goes on later in life, but it was always there and just never paid attention to it.
Yeah.
Is really the biggest thing for me.
No, and
So
that's
Mike,
Like
fine.
when you
That's
want it, I guess said a different way, right? Like when you want it, go get it. Is
yeah.
more the thing with my grandfather. And then the other thing that I would say from him that I really took, and this is not so much like a life lesson bestowed upon me, but more of like who he was,
yeah.
is like
Hmm.
things were never too serious. At the height, at the panic,
Ooh, I
at
like
the
that.
bottom, at the misery, like all the way in between, everything going on, nothing is ever too critical that you can't either A fix it or B take it lightly, right? Like that's sort of what it is.
Was that an age thing or was that an experience like
Not
unique
so
to
much like a
him?
life lesson. I think that was just him. He had a rough go at life,
Yeah.
and to be such a sort of comedic person throughout the whole thing with us,
Yeah.
um, again, like I sort of look back on it now, and I'm like, man, like he really just handled it well, like
Yeah.
just handled it well.
Yeah. That's the previous generations dealt with a lot more than we did.
Yeah.
And we dealt with a lot more than next generations probably will. That will eventually cycle back through, right? That's always a cycle.
Yep.
But when you really think about our grandparents, man, it was wild. I mean, just wild. I mean, Mike knows, I grew up, I had my grandma in the house for a good chunk of my early
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And like she would talk about how if they wanted butter, they had to make it, you know? And it's just
Yep.
like, yeah, if you grew what you ate, you know what I mean? If you wanted
Right.
meat, you killed something outside and you had meat, It was just like, what?
What?
I mean,
Yep.
just a complete, and then on top of that, to go through, a world war, a depression, like, I mean, just wild stuff. I mean, she was born in 1913, so it's
Right.
like,
Yep.
what? You know, and just wild stuff. And so I think that generation just has a different outlook. And you got to get that, right? I mean, as we get older, I see people who are 18 years old flipping out because their cell phone's at 10%. And I'm like, bro, it's going to be okay,
Yeah.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And,
Life's gonna be just
and
fine.
yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so
Exactly.
I wonder if it's just like that times us being double our age. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I do
Right.
have a question this though. You to keep going back to work ethic, but
Yeah.
everyone you just described had a very good work ethic.
Agreed.
So where did if those were motivating people, like where did you kind of not, you said you didn't get that till later. Why do you think that is?
So it's funny. So I see this in my son now, which is sad to say. Um, but like never needed to take it seriously. It all came very easy, right? Like school came easy. Athletics, while I was not like the premier athlete, came easy enough that I could play and be
Mm.
competitive all the time
Ooh.
without tons of practice. Everything came very easy. And so, I think ignorance is bliss when things come easy and you don't have to try.
So what are you imparting on your son to try to see if like you can maybe write that, or is it just that he has to figure it out on himself one day?
I think it's figure it out right now. I mean, there's only so much you can say, and I look back now and I think about me being in that seat and what I could have said to myself, and like
Mm.
he does the same thing. He's sort of just like and just like and just moves on with his
Yeah.
life, and it's like so there's
Yeah.
only so much you can do to get there, right?
Got it.
Right.
No,
Um,
that's true.
right? And a lot of people did this for me, and I had other people outside of my family too, like lots of neighbors and coaches and other things that sort of keep you on that path moving forward. And so you just hope that one day the light bulb goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
mean, smart kid, like same thing, right? Like I was never a dummy. I didn't get myself in much trouble, all those other things. Not very exciting, but never worked for it. Like I probably could have. Like my younger brother, way harder worker. Things did not come as naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Busted everything all the time from kindergarten through, like every day to be the best because he knew he needed to work and he did it. So, and that's something probably you would have heard later, but like that's something that is a good reminder for me now being older,
Uh-huh.
having watched him work hard. I feel like a lot of people may not learn a lot from the younger generation. I learned a
Mm-hmm.
ton from my younger brother, just a ton.
You
Like,
know, what's interesting is
That's cool.
we talk about this a lot. This is just another way to talk about it, but like, that's why I want to be very successful and continue to be successful, especially when I have a kid, but like I'm terrified to give them too much and they become spoiled, right? It's just another way to say it,
yep,
right? And there's a lot of really rich, spoiled kids uh, that spend their money on drugs and other horrible things because they don't know any other way, right?
Yeah.
I went, my buddy, I was in LA for some meetings, and I used to do a lot of TV commercial stuff, and one of the directors that we worked with, uh, I mean, he's like buddies with everyone who's in LA, and he lives in Calabasas, which is like literally the Kardashians are his next door neighbors. And you go through this gated community, and you think to yourself, like, what the fuck, man? Like, this is just like a totally different level of living. And he's like one of the poor people, right? And I asked his kid, because his kid had just come home from college, and I was like, so what did you guys like do? And he was like, well, there was a lot of cocaine and there was a lot of parties. And I was like, that sounds about right. I mean, because like they just have, I guess,
Yeah.
no frame of reference.
But
I don't know.
right. What do you
yeah,
do? Right. Yeah. What do you
yeah.
do?
But the scarier thing when you talk about ultra wealth like that, Mike, is that they're insulated from consequences way into adulthood. And
Yeah.
so, when you say a lot of parties, a lot of cocaine, college, I'm sure was easy. They bought their way into that. It's like you don't need grades for college. You need money for college.
Right.
And once you have that, you get out, and of course, their network is powerful that get to that job. But eventually, you hit a point where you're like, "Ooh, somebody outworked you," and that stings, And it's an important lesson to learn because I mean, gee, you rob somebody of growth when you take that away from them. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a ring the bell. That's a ring the bell moment for me, right?
Right.
Like
yeah,
that's what hit me. That's what hit me too. Couple things you said though that I want to go back to.
sure,
So
let's do it.
one thing I really appreciate about not Calabasas, but maybe people who have that money or influence, um, Shaq is probably my biggest role model, right? And so it's funny because he's like in this space too, which is
Yeah.
just like comical. But growing up a basketball player, um, interestingly enough, I think a lot of kids grow up and want to be X, right? And I never
hmm
wanted to be X. I always wanted to play with X. And for me, it was like my dream was like, imagine throwing Shaq just the ball, just let him go to work and watch that happen, right? Um, and so like he's always just been a good influence, and like thankfully, right? I mean, he turned out to be okay.
hmm
A lot of these guys don't, and he turns out to just be like one of these really positive, great influences, sort of across the board with
Yeah.
no trouble and nothing wrong, which like
Right.
happy for me, I guess.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, listen, there are exceptions, but I think it just comes down to, and this is why we ask these questions, because I think it's a really interesting your response, because inevitably people will say they're grounded in XYZ, and then like you're alluding to, and I can't wait to hear this, like you had your aha moment and you then did flip a switch, right? And
Yeah.
Yep,
but that conversation is just not very interesting if we don't get your foundation.
hundred
Uh,
For
percent,
sure.
so we
hundred
really
percent.
appreciate you sharing. Maddie, any other questions before we kind of go into high school and get into
No, no,
college?
no, I like that. My only yeah, when you talked about Shaq, I mean, I think that one important lesson I wish more youth understood, especially in athletics, is that like talent will get you drafted, but hard work is the only way you'll get to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying? And so
absolutely.
it's like you have to understand all the people in the Hall of Fame had both, right? All of them were
Right.
talented. You can't
Yep.
be in the NBA and not be talented.
Yep.
Um, but what's the difference between the Shaqs, the Kobes, the Jordans? You know what I mean? The LeBrons is their work ethic's ridiculous, and they never know how to turn it off. They
Exactly.
just go and go and go, and a lot of lessons there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, man,
I think yeah.
bring us through. So you're doing all these things. We're going into high school. How'd it go from there?
Yeah. High school was good, right? Got myself um sort of similar on the school side, just got myself through, right? Still
Right.
no
hmm
aha moment here. Just still no aha moment. Sort of
hmm
85, 90 student, which like some people are gonna like roll their eyes and be like, what the right? Like, but that was always just sort of bare minimum to get there, an 85, 90 student, and got lucky. On the other side, which, you know, really started to impress now and impress upon me is was working a ton, right? Started a paper route like super young. So again, credit to mom, like
Love it. Love it.
came home one day and was just like, guess what? You got a job. And I was like, "Yeah, I got a job." Like, that was it. Just like outright. Like
I
no
love it.
question, no, are you interested in this? No, like whatever, like guess what? You got a job. And so like, interesting for me because like I sort of explained before, I was out shoveling driveways, doing that type of stuff like anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it was part of like he'll want this, which is a lot of my mom is like, "Oh, I know he wants this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it."
hmm
Um and maybe it was just like, well, right time, right place. She got it and took it for me. But really, that started the spiral of like just working all the time, right? Like from then on, like paper route is not a joke job, even though it may not be a very long period of time to work.
hmm
You're doing it every single day,
Yeah.
7 days a week, rain, snow, doesn't matter. That thing's going out the door,
And people need
and
their paper, bro. People are very
that's it.
adamant about getting their paper that day and
Especially
age.
That's
back
it.
then, man.
Yeah, back
Especially
then, you
back
better
then.
get your
Right.
damn paper.
Yeah, you
there
didn't
was
get your like
no
Google updates. No, no, no.
No.
right. There was no like I didn't get it today. Like let me scroll the internet. There was none of that. Right. So
Yeah,
um, so every day just how to do it. Like, and that started, I want to say like sophomore year of high school. Um, and just like straight through, really just straight through, carried it on. And that was every day, like rain, and if you don't do it, you got to find somebody to pick up your work, right? There is no like, oh, I call it into the paper company and they give me somebody to take over my route for a week. This
yeah,
is you're fully responsible for your own business at 13, 14 years old. Um, which was good for me, frankly. Like
Yeah.
it took a lot of the things I wanted to do or be or think about being and made them a reality very, very quickly. Small scale, very quickly, right? 50
yeah,
papers, whatever it was, but
Yeah.
you're you're 7 days a week at work. You're, you know, figuring out your work shifts. Either it's you or it's my grandfather or it's somebody else if we're away on vacation,
Right.
right? Going back to my grandfather, like super lucky by the time I got this, retired, also loved his paper, knew other people would love his paper,
Right.
was very helpful when I needed him. Um, and then, on the other side of that, like you're dealing with, like I said, 50, 60 papers, you're dealing with 50, 60 clients. Like those aren't going to a deli and getting dropped in a box, right? You have 50 clients, you're collecting from those clients, you're doing all those little things that you have to understand the front end of the business. You have to understand the back end of the business.
Yeah.
You have
yeah,
to understand that this old lady that's 75, 80 years old wants her paper in the rain, in a bag, in her door, tucked away, even if you're soaking wet,
Right.
or you don't get
Right.
a tip, or you get zero tip for the week if you wreck
Man.
one paper out of seven.
Who would have
And
thought paper route would have started molding a 13-year-old young Rich? I love this
yeah,
though. One thing you said that I wanted to interject real quick because I'm interested in your thoughts on this is you said something persistent, but it was a small little step, right? Because it was, yes, it was overwhelming, but it was still maybe, let's say, 30 to 50 papers a
yep.
day. And it was, in your mind, at least manageable. Do you think that had some influence of like being successful or making you like understand, like, okay, I could do this? And is this kind of small step a mentality that you think about, or is it just a toss away comment?
No, I mean, I think it's relevant. I think, right, that's relevant a lot to what we're all doing now as far as like burnout goes, right? Like you have to
mhm,
understand how to pace yourself and take one step at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and it was, again, like this is amongst doing all those other things, right? Like just shoveling driveways or doing everything else and sort of going back to the whole thing and thinking about this, like you leverage that paper out into like literally inserts into papers that say, winter's coming. Here's my phone number. I'm gonna shovel your driveway too, right? Like you call
Uh-huh.
me, my brother will come, my friends will come, we're gonna shovel your driveway.
mhm.
Dude,
I
look
like
at
And just
this.
this.
like
Now you're turning into an entrepreneur, bro.
but it's
Yeah,
that's just how I guess that's just how the mind's always worked, right? Like that's
Right.
yeah,
not I figured it out. This is not the aha moment. This is like my mind has always worked like that.
Okay.
From the very beginning.
All
So
right. So what's
um
next? I'm anticipating getting to the aha moment. So let's
so
keep on
so
moving forward.
I can probably like just gas pedal through high school, right?
Yeah. That's fine.
There's some moments there like got cut from the high school basketball team. That was like a sort of defining moment in my life.
mhm.
Um,
Oh, you got to talk to us a little bit about that. You can't just pass
well,
that over. Like, what did that do to impact you?
was
Because I
just
think that is a big moment, right? What did it teach you?
super, super
Right.
bitter, right? Like, couldn't be more bitter. Blame everybody for everything. It's not me. Practiced so hard, did this, and now you've listened to the last X number of minutes of like me not working very hard, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And everybody else's fault. Coaches didn't see it. This guy's dad. This. You weren't good enough to make the team at the end of the day, right? Um, so I haven't really talked about my dad, but like in these moments, um, he was there, right? Like just picked it up, picked me up from school, and was like, "We'll do a Knicks game tonight. We'll hang out. Done. We forget this whole thing even happened, right?" And was able to sort of like just change the mold a lot.
Mhm.
But defining moment in that like now when you look back on these things, you realize not to hold other people accountable. You
Yeah.
realize, could you have done more? And if you couldn't have done more, then it's luck at some point, right? Like at some point, the names get pulled out of the hat. And if it's a 12-person team and you're 13, then you're 13.
Right.
Like it's just the way it works. But it ends up being a great thing because, 12th man on the bench on a high school team, go play rec ball and like flourished into like enjoying men's league and everything else, junior in high school, and just played every minute of the game, star of the rec team, and like we're scoring 25-30 every night
Yeah.
and loved it, right? Like, and just had a great time doing it.
Right.
And it became fun again instead of just like, "Oh, I got to make this team. Oh, I got to make this team." And it was just like, all right, you can just relax and enjoy this thing that you've had so much fun doing.
Yeah.
And the important thing there is probably one of my best friends growing up lives 3 houses down. We talked about it earlier, like every day, every day. This is the guy. He understood the work ethic at the beginning. Didn't come easy.
Mm-hmm.
Was out there, fiercest competitor I've ever seen. Junior year of high school, burnt out. Done. Easy college basketball player, even if he's D3, burnt out. Just let it go. Said, I'm not playing anymore. And it was
Interesting.
like, I looked 3 houses down and I'm like, dude, how? Like, I'd give anything right now as this person to be in your shoes, a star of a team. And now I look back and I'm like, well, like, maybe I had the right path for me.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
worked out in the end. Sort of taking the road I did and just enjoying with the friends I made on those teams who
Yeah.
were also friends before, but like enjoying that time with those friends and just really loving the thing that I was doing again. So it was frankly great for me.
Dude, that you said a lot of words of wisdom right there. And one of the things that I said you liked, it's um I think you would be, maybe not be surprised, but I just want to reiterate the amount of people that have been on that show, myself included, having that moment in life. And you might not have gotten to the big moment yet, but like this self-realization that you are the one that is responsible for your outcomes. I mean, it's
100%.
a
This
it's
was not that
a
moment.
right, but you're alluding to it as like this is a little teaser, right? But that's
Yeah.
such a
100%.
simple thought, and it's one of the most frustrating things is because it's one of those weird things too that I feel like until you have it, like your brain has to somehow put it together. You can say it all day long till you're blue in the face, and you're gonna be like whatever. But when it
I'm
happens
gonna
to you,
say it.
you're like, oh shit! Like
Yep.
now I
I'm gonna
get it,
say it to my
right?
son. I'm gonna say it to my son for the next 15 years, and
Yeah,
he's either gonna get it or he's not on his own, right? And
right.
that's like we were talking
Yeah.
about at the beginning. Like he's either gonna get it or he's not. And
Yeah,
like I know so many people who are so incredibly talented that I guess just never have this aha moment, and you just watch this
Yeah.
amazing talent just squander.
yeah, yeah.
So it's rough.
Maddie, any thoughts
Well,
before we
Now that
move
I'm
forward?
incredibly talented, I'm an accountant.
Right.
for sure,
You
right?
are
I mean,
talented. You're on our show.
yeah.
We're talented. You ain't taking that away from me.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I think a struggle moment is that we develop new skills, right? So the person that maybe doesn't have the work ethic that's required, it's very interesting to watch how skillful they can be at justifying why. I know some
Oh, yeah.
people in my life who
Ooh.
it's sad because they're brilliant people, but man, whenever there's an issue, they will tell you this elaborate reason. You said how it's everybody else's fault. But even if it's even, I'm not even saying even the blame game, just they're very good at turning a situation and making it sound like they made the only or the best possible choice, but it's really not the case, right? It just, they had to satisfy this part, this, I think it's ego and pride
Oh,
to be
yes.
able to kind of swallow the bitter pill. And the problem is we get good at that, so everyone else around us also believes it, right? And then
Yes.
that becomes the skill,
Right.
and you become essentially a professional victim, right? And you see that a lot too. And it's a shame because again, they're being robbed the very aha moment that the three of us have discussed, right? Because yeah, it's difficult. It's really hard to look at yourself and say, shit, it's me.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
And that sucks. It
Yeah.
sucks to say.
Yep.
And then wake up the next day and keep going with it. So I just think there's some moments there that these are big. These are big life moments that help people move forward. Because
Yep.
once you can take responsibility for it, okay, let's get a game plan and start growing. Let's fix it. And that's, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the path to recovery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Definitely is.
that's
Definitely is.
the positive. If you handle it right, it can go the other way too and destroy people for a lifetime, which is unfortunate
Oh,
as well.
Explain
definitely.
that, Mikey. I'm sorry. What do you mean?
You never have the real conversation
Never.
in the mirror, and you're
Yeah,
sitting at the VFW with a beer in your hand, blaming and hating everything in life.
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm saying acknowledging it's you is the first step to
Oh
the path
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
recovery.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, unfortunately,
Dude.
that is
Yeah.
not everybody.
I don't
Um,
even think it's the norm. I think most people
Oh,
don't get that
100%.
moment.
It's a
So
majority,
yeah.
right? We talk about this all the time. Our brains are still hardwired to be safe and comfortable and not do things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the
Protect
most
yourself.
uncomfortable fucking thing you can do is have an aha
Yeah.
moment. We all know
Yeah.
this, right? All right, man.
For
Yes.
So
sure.
take us through. Got canned. Ended up actually having a cool basketball career though, and we went to
Yeah.
Knicks
Loved it.
games, and you had fun. So what happens after that?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
other thing, this is, I mean, you guys are good at this.
Thanks, man.
The other thing I haven't discussed at all, which is like a really pervasive thing throughout my entire life, is like avid video game player, right? And
Oh,
something you guys said, like Maddie said it, like, and it like triggered that thought of like how I conceptualize now, at least, and or sort of growing up, like leveling up, right? Like that's sort of
Mhm.
always how I have looked at. It's a very basic way to think about it, but you said it, right? And like you learn skills, you add, like you're
yeah.
just adding stats to your brackets, right? Like that's all you're doing. You're a
Yeah.
Madden character, you're a whatever, like you're something, you're always adding stats to your character. And so that's that's a big one for me on just sort of how I look at
Yeah.
life.
I
It's just
like
how I
that.
look at life. Like avid video game player since I'm 4 years old. Like Nintendo, again, with like again, very little consequence, very much freedom in a divorced household with a mom, like TV in my room at like 4 years old with a
Right.
Nintendo, grinding Mario and like, Sesame Street alphabet games on Nintendo at 4.
I
Like
love
Yeah.
it.
all the way through, all the
Same.
way through.
Yeah.
Every system, Nintendo,
We know
Genesis,
that.
boom, boom. They're in the closet, like have them all. They
Oh,
all
those were
were.
other beautiful times, man.
Yeah.
We've heard variants of people using video games as an analogy, but not like as hardcore, but the leveling up and taking that through. I love that, man. We're definitely going to chop that up in a video because it's a great way to say that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I mean,
gotta,
like that's just how I conceptualize like learning too, right?
right,
Like it's not linear. Like nothing is linear. Like you get to a point, you stack the brick. You get to a point, you stack the brick. Like it's not always like walking around the, thing, the lap 10 times to get to where you need to go.
right.
Sometimes you need to build the bricks and you need to walk back 10 steps to get another one to come back and put it back up.
Dude, look
So,
at you dropping it like it's hot, dude. That's another
yeah.
great thought. We're gonna cut that up too.
So
Uh,
those I'm glad you guys said that because that really like it hit me of like, right. This is actually how you think about life. So like
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love
this
it.
should be talked about.
Before you move on, though, you have to hit us with the hard goods, which is what games really impacted you? Because I'd love to hear
So
what you love to play.
yeah, so like Diablo 2 is probably the burner for me and my brother. And
Bro.
my brother actually spent more hours than I did on it, but like we spent just I don't know, thousands of hours.
Yeah.
What was the
Thousands of
character?
hours.
Tell me the character.
I mean
Hammered in?
mostly a
Hammered in?
barbarian to be honest, just like running around like
Ooh,
brute forcing
whirlwind?
people always. And like my brother like in the back like hitting people, sorcerer or something, like always. Um
I
and
love
it's
it.
just funny how timing wise for the two of us that all worked out, right? Like where trajectory wise, and I'm sure other brothers, etc., like have these aha moments for themselves, but like sitting literally in my bedroom with two computers side by side,
Yeah.
able to have the internet, which is not a thing that existed like this at this scale, right? In this nature with this game. And just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
thousands of hours together. And like there's tons before that, right? And like Final Fantasy Tactics, personally, huge influence. That was like
Yes.
a defining, like more than seven. Tactics is like a defining moments game for me.
Yeah.
Have played it like several times over on tablets because it's fun and I can just
Yeah.
do it mindlessly, which is great. And then like, and then the staple, I think, like put the whole thing together is like many hours of Call of Duty, right? Just like how many hours of Call of Duty as you sort of evolve, and I'm glad we triggered this because this happened in high school too. Um, how many hours of this thing that again didn't exist for the three of us to be able to play together, right? We could
Yeah.
when
Right.
we're done, we can all close it up and we can go and play, and that didn't exist when we were kids.
Nope.
Didn't exist.
Nope.
Um,
Yeah.
but the thing that triggered is, and we'll get to philosophically like why this has changed my mind, but I was so against online video game play when it started. Like adamantly against this thing
Yeah.
that clearly has like revolutionized gaming, right? Something I love passionately, gaming.
Right.
And love Madden, played it like an animal, like loved all these other like first person, third person shooters, played them like crazy.
Yep.
Hated the concept of going online and having it be any less than perfect playing online. Not understanding this takes time.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like where we are right now, right? Like I think, and I've said this to people on Twitter about where we are and use this as an example, but like where we are right now in Web3 as a space, right?
Yeah.
As we're going to that point in time, for people to just be complete naysayers of this Bitcoin won't work, Ethereum won't work, Web3, NFT, this won't work, closed minded, shut off, it will not work. I know we're early as a joke, but we are so early in what can happen here.
Yeah.
It may be 40 iterations later of what we actually get to, but don't be so close minded because this thing that you're looking at today may be completely in a different form, but revolutionize what we all think.
Yeah.
Banking, other things.
Yeah, and it's already starting to
For
mold,
sure.
right? Amazon's coming
Yeah.
into the space. The bigger people are coming into this space. The Discord
Yes.
days will die, right?
Of course. Of course.
It's we're LAN partying right now in Web3, right?
Exactly.
We might not
I have
even be
friends.
there.
Yeah, I have friends that left the fund that I was at that are going and they're building, like structured credit on chain. Like they're building all these things that like
Yeah.
people don't consider what's going on with what we're doing in this small little bubble of PFPs and art and utility, right? Like they don't consider what is actually happening with mortgages and financing and all these other things that like
Yeah.
we don't think about them in our small little bubble.
I
100%.
think, and I think another important concept when it comes to this is people love I mean, you're with hedge fund, people and just investing in general. How many people say things like, "Man, if I could go back to 1984 and invest in Microsoft." Here's the problem. In 1984, you would have been laughed at because it didn't look like Microsoft then. It looked like a
Yeah.
bunch of geeks in a garage with wires everywhere.
Yep.
And you would have looked at that and said, "Okay, I'm sure you guys are going to be the next big thing," right?
Right.
Of course, it's easy now to say we want to go back. And so what you have to recognize is say, what are the consistent trends that these things we could, if we could, get in a DeLorean and go back and do this, what did they have in common? You know what I mean?
Oh,
What
yeah.
was it about Bezos founding Amazon and like what was the grind he was going through? What's interesting is that when you look at a lot of those indicators, everything you just said about Web3 is ticks them, right? Because at
Yep.
the end of the day, it's not just that they were doing something innovative. It's not just that they were smart. It's not that they were willing to take a risk or that they got money. They were solving problems we didn't even know we were going to have 10 years later, right? And they had foresight. And here's the thing, when you say things like mortgages and the way banking is done, listen, blockchain is like meant for this. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's such a cookie cutter answer. And here's the thing: if you don't believe that, why are all these major companies quietly investing and putting efforts into it? They know,
Right.
but they have to boo-hoo it now because there's trillions at stake, right? And whole markets at stake. And it's just very interesting because you're dead on, right? But you have to look at it now and say, this is your Microsoft 1984 moment, and we're here, and it's pretty cool.
Someone said to me, and this has really stuck with me, and this is a more recent thing, probably the last 5 to 7 years, but and this is a hedge funds thing, sort of getting investors. Everyone wants to be first to be second, right? And like that's the way that this goes. No one wants to be the first one in with 2 feet in the water to say like, oh, I'll commit money to this new fund or to this new opportunity or idea. But once you have the one, everybody wants to be first to be second.
Yeah.
Oh, Maddie co-signed that? Oh yeah, I have money for that now.
Right.
It just sprouted up out of nowhere, right? That's a such a and it's really stuck with me when it was said because I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is not just applicable to this one small
You got it.
thing. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be first to be second. So,
dude, what a great tangent. And what some
Love
just
it.
dropping knowledges. And this all came from Matt saying leveled up, which turned into video games that's now turned into Web3. This is why Maddie and I love what we do, because you never know where we're going to take you. And we just have fun going along for the ride. So let's go back to high school,
College?
right? Then now we're at high school. We're
we're
at
moving,
college.
we're
We
moving.
pedaled through.
Yeah, college.
We pedaled through
milked all
high
the
school, but we found some gems. So I'm sure we'll
We
find
did.
gems more. Let's get to college, man.
Yeah, I had nothing for you guys in high school.
You can't get by us with nothing, brother. We'll get something.
Exactly. So college was the start of the aha moment, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
continue working, doing all these things. Like now I'm like working at a sports complex, which my my stepdad worked at a sports complex, met my mom when I was 16 playing basketball at this sports complex. Looks at this lovely woman, looks at me, is like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with this kid, but his mom seems lovely. I was not the most well kept with my mouth. Have never been the quiet one in the room.
What?
You
A
turn
born
it-
New Yorker in Jersey, and you weren't
Yeah.
kept with your mouth? I can't believe it.
I don't
Still-
believe that.
Still, it'll never.
That's
people,
good, man. You
I
gotta
think
own
people
it.
always think I'm gonna bite my tongue, and then it comes out. But so I'm working at this sports complex now, like through college, doing a bunch of stuff. But the thing probably that I want to focus on, which is really where like the aha moment is started college, pledged fraternity, right? Like your normal, sort of normal, I guess I'll say normal college experience. It's different for everybody. But do my time, meet my friends, integrate into like the opposite of what I said in grammar school and high school, and really integrate into a larger group of people and assimilate into like one social circle.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, and I don't give my mom enough credit privately, but I'm giving her hopefully enough credit here, and I think she may be listening. But she pushed me outright, like in high school, to go into accounting. So something I left out is I did an accounting class at the end of high school. That was one thing I did do in senior year. And like it was fine, right? Like who knows about a 101 class of any subject. But she was just like, you're gonna be an accountant. Like didn't even question it. Like she was like, maybe if you want to go to law school later, like you can, but like you'll be an accountant. And I was like, or not, like, or I could be a psychologist, or I could be like any of these other wonderful jobs that have nothing to do with math or accounting, even though I was always good at math, which is not totally an accounting thing, but people think it is. So pledge of fraternity, start my major, like I really did zero, less than zero work for a solid 18 months. Like, so sort of left it out, but went to Catholic grammar and high school all the way through, right? So like
Okay.
while I was this lazy human, there was structure around me the entire time, right? There
Yeah.
was, like I said, with all these other things, people, forces sort of keeping me in the tunnel because I was good enough to survive doing zero.
Yeah.
And frankly, got very lucky. That was not the case in college, right? Like I went to an all boys high school and then I got to college and the world opened up. And I was
Mm.
like, well, hello to the world, right? Like, hello to
Yeah.
the world. Um, Zero for 18 months. Pledged, partied, loved it, soaked in every second of, quote, what I missed but didn't care to experience in high school.
Right.
Just didn't care. Looking
Yeah.
back, right? Didn't care to experience that in high school. In college, it hit me, and I was like, wow, this is lovely. Like, this is what a life we can live here.
Yeah.
And so, really soaked up every second. And then I got into my major and continued to try to do nothing the entire time and thought, like all of my life, I would just skate by,
Right.
right? And I went to, I went to St. John's, so like a general college, like not it's a good school, right? It's a good
Yeah.
business school, but it's not an NYU. And so thought I could skate by, had a small scholarship, and was threatened with losing that scholarship because again, I did zero. And had that aha moment. My grandmother grabbed me by the face and was just like, "Look, dude, like this is like Christmas of sophomore year." Grabbed me by the face and was like, "Look, this is it for you. Like this is where we need to just like pick it all up and put it together and like figure it out, right?" And
Yeah.
my grandfather had passed earlier that year. Um, so sort of a little bit of mixed situation going on with everybody.
Right.
And that was I don't really credit that with like a super rebellious period or anything like missing him.
Mm-hmm.
Sad, definitely, but not like a I'm losing my way type of thing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was pretty much scattered the entire way. Um, Sort of didn't pick it up right away from her. Didn't,
Yeah.
but definitely thought about it. And I was like, that's weird. Have never really needed that conversation before.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
ever. And then had a meeting with the dean. They were like, "That's it, cutting you off. It's over." And I was like, "Give me one more semester, right? Like, give me." Took winter classes like over the winter break, and then it clicked. And like, I don't have this one defining like this moment in time when I close my eyes and this is it.
Yeah.
But that 2 week stretch of doing an art class, it wasn't a difficult class,
Right.
and like visiting different museums for 2 straight weeks. What a tough life. It clicked. And I was like, you better take this seriously going forward. And, Maddie, you made this point too of like sort of looking around you, right? In the
Yeah.
in the professional sports environment and looking around you and watching people succeed when you are not. And I never really felt it before. I never really felt that like my buddy down the block. He was just a better athlete. Like he just had that. He had
Yeah.
it. Could do everything I wanted. I'm not going to be LeBron, right? Like it's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, when it came to accounting, I'm like, well, you're smart enough to do this. This isn't like the to the point that we made earlier. Like this isn't a you can pass on it and blame someone else later and figure that
Yeah.
out. Here it comes. It's about to hit you in the face. Everybody that you care about is going to look you dead in the face and tell you you failed.
Right.
And then I had that moment in the mirror of like, that's not going to be me. After all the things I've done, right? Like I know I've sort of given it a nice easy go through the whole thing, but like I said, I did the paper routes and the this and flipping cards and all these other
Yeah.
things that like school was never important to me. All these other things, my hobbies or my interests were very very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time it sort of flipped and it was like, "Oh, the thing you're doing, that's the important thing now." And had that aha moment of like time to buckle down
Right.
and just taught myself to work. It wasn't easy. Like I am by nature a procrastinator,
Hmm.
humongous procrastinator. Every paper, everything, night of writing it all every time. even when I got good and did my work, still at the last minute. But just had that moment of like, now it's time to sort of buckle down.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you say, like, when, like, obviously, I think deep down, the grandma taking you aside heavily impacted you, even though it wasn't like you woke up the next day and you're like, I'm a changed person, right?
Yep.
But
I think about it to this day. That conversation, I can close my eyes, even though it's not the aha moment, and close my eyes and think about exactly what was said to me, word for word what was said to me in that
yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's different for everybody. It's not. I'm glad you had it, man, because it's huge. You know, like I vividly remember like a conversation in the mirror, like the prototypical thing, how you think it's gonna happen. Now, I would say mine. It wasn't like I was thinking I needed to have it. I just was like, it did hit me all at once, and I'm like, holy shit, right? Yours is a little softer, but like, you know, thank God for your grandma, right? Because she definitely at least started you down that path. So, dude, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that. You know, I know that's not
Yeah.
easy for everybody to talk to, but like, you know, you sharing stuff like that, you know, maybe somebody's going through a similar thing and they watch this and it helps them push them over the edge. So I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate it.
When
Maddie,
I'm
any
out there, when I'm out there like joking around with people on Twitter and Discord, like,
right,
hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here for you. Like,
right.
that's not a joke for me, right? Like, to your point, people struggle with way, way more than I do. And my wife says this all the time. Like, I am lucky that I am all of these things I've just discussed, but I'm lucky that I'm a super balanced person by nature. I just
Right.
am lucky
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah.
I have watched so many people around me, from my friend playing basketball who just lost it all the way through now. So many people have real struggles in life. And like that is not okay for people to just close up and not talk about. And like I mean it when I say, I don't know you from a hole in the wall and I'm happy to listen. I'll get on a call, I'll get on a video call. Like it's just people need to be more open
Yeah.
with other people. They just
Yeah.
need to.
100%, man. It's one of the things that drives us, right?
Yep.
We think it's important that people understand the humans behind this space. You know, that's and fortunately, the space has evolved where it actually isn't it's not cool anymore to not be doxxed, right? People have
Mm-hmm.
lost enough money at this point that they're like,
Yeah.
nah, that game's over.
Exactly.
Maddie,
Exactly.
anything before we move forward?
No, man, let's move forward. I'm curious. This is good because now I'm starting to see how all this is clicking together. So I want to see, okay, so you have the moment, it's time to buckle down, you're in your accounting classes. I feel like if this was a movie, after the winter semester, there would be a montage of some sort. Is
This
that what
the
happened?
whole
Montage
yeah,
into getting your CPA?
the whole next 2 years is a huge montage of just like straight A's, right?
I
Like
love it.
killed it, focused, buckled down, straight study all the time, like nose in the book, everything, everything, the entire time.
What'd the dean
Because
say?
congratulations, you got it. But like like it was really funny because like I went from fraternity crowd, which like I didn't lose, but like to the to the academic crowd that was there, right? Like St. John's has a 5-year BS MBA, and I went for my MBA. Like I knew what I was doing when I started as a freshman, and I went for my MBA. Like I didn't go for 4 years to jerk around. I went
Yeah.
to start with the intent of going for that end goal. And so I already had 5 years, even though everybody goes for 5 years. And so I knew I had the next 3 to just go strong at it the entire way, right? And so Montage lives. Year 1, sort of same work, really hard working at school. Year 2 and 3 started at an accounting firm, did an internship, and then stayed there, worked full time during the day, did busy season my first year, and went to school at night, which was complementary to everything I've explained in, paper route, all this other stuff, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
was I'll say it this way, like I felt like I was conditioned for it. It didn't phase me like other friends in my class were like, dude, I'm exhausted. I'm like, just going at a steady pace. Like, We do
Yeah.
40, we come here, we do another, 20 hours of school, we go home, we do schoolwork, we wake up, we do it again. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
we rinse, we repeat. Like, that's it. It's over. It clicked,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it was over for me. And so you just go for it. You just go for it. And the person I actually haven't mentioned at all, which like later in the story is going to get like super important, but Matt, who's my co-founder,
Yeah.
I think he's in chat too. Met Matt in high school, roughly like sophomore year, junior year of high school. Weren't close friends. We're like outside ancillary circles of like me and one of my best friends, him and one of his best friends. They were friends,
Yeah.
and we were just like sort of outside friends through that, right? And then when college rolled around, and this period of college rolled around, where I sort of rolled out of my fraternity, he went to St. John's as well. We just clicked, and that was like whatever was going on at the time. We just clicked, and that was it. And we've just really been, best friends since. Hugs, love, the whole thing. We've just been best friends ever since. Like he's my go-to for everything and anything that I would ever need. That guy.
That's awesome, man.
Right? And so like just super supportive, like the nicest, way nicer than I am, like the nicest human being. And like great sounding board
Yeah.
for all these like things that I just explained to you, right? Like of like what I would do for someone else always has been my sounding board, no matter
Right.
how hard it gets. Home, girls, work, this, always that guy that I can just go bounce the ball off the wall.
So critically important to have somebody like that too. That's awesome, man.
Massive.
So, so take us through. You said you got your MBA. Any highlights in your kind of professional career that you'd like to touch on, whether it be mentors or managers or leaders that impacted you before we get to the Web3?
Yeah, very critical one. My wife.
Ooh, I like this. All right,
So
tell me more.
Fun story. I sat next to my wife at work for 4 years before dating.
Okay,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Yeah, like just dated other people. Like I don't even think either of us thought about it. I thought about it, but I don't think she thought about it.
I mean, we always think about it, right? But
I always thought about it. I don't, and she laughs all the time, and she's like, "That wasn't a thing," and I'm like, "That wasn't a thing for you. That was a thing for me."
I love it. It's so funny how guys think compared to girls.
Yeah, like, and not even like, but this is someone who, like, we went to lunch every day, like right? Like we worked in an accounting firm, a small place. It wasn't like a huge place. It was 300-400 people in the office, which is not small, but like it's not 20,000 people globally, right? It's a couple thousand. And so like this is someone that I just got to know differently. I just got to know her differently. And so timing wise, so now I do all of this in college to become this animal. I'll just say it that way of like, I'm going to get at it. And now I am like almost too far in the other direction of like, I can do anything, right? Like I'm going to be a partner. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it like as a graduate from college and who I think I am. And very thankful for her. She just put me in my place. Like,
interesting. Okay.
On many levels.
Yeah.
Just put me in my place.
Yeah.
And in a very good way, right? Like I'm not resentful towards that. This is a like, woo, thankful. I needed that to stay down this road, or else who knows where this thing could have gone. And then, one day, like, opened up my eyes and we were both single, and it was like, I think that could work. Like, I think that could work, and could work like right now. And like, and just sort of went down that road. So like that to me, funny enough, like, so no, not a mentor, right? Like, certainly not. Well, sort of. She's older than me, but not by much.
Oh, they can come in many forms, man. Somebody that you learn and grow from, I consider a mentor.
Yeah, but she's the most humble person I've ever met. Like, just came from a very different background than me. Like my brother, like had to try very hard at everything she's ever done. Probably the best leader I know as a human being. I look at her and I watch her around other people, and people want to follow her into battle, right? Like if she had a shield and a sword, everybody's following her into battle, me
Yeah.
included. And maybe this is like me being a little blind, but like this is what I see. And so it just was a super humbling experience for somebody. Then on the flip side of having it so easy, now having worked for a short amount of time so hard to do things and watching it be so successful so quickly, I could tear down the mountain with my arms, right? At the beginning of work, like that's how I felt. And it was like one stone at a time, Rich. Like not
Yeah.
taking the whole thing down today.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that was a huge wake up call, frankly. Another sort of aha moment of like what I needed, and huge wake up call of like pace yourself out as you go through the rest of your life. You cannot conquer Rome in a day.
Yeah. And Maddie and I talk about this a lot of times, and especially in this space, right? You see, which I'd say 80% of it is all bullshit and fake scams of people making all this money overnight and blah, blah, blah. Or us in particular, seeing someone with 200,000 followers and like, dude, we need to get there quicker. But the real reality is, man, if you do it consistently over a long period of time, you're going to be sitting pretty, right?
Right? It's the picture of the ladder, right? And the one ladder with all the steps, and the one ladder with like every fifth step. And it's like,
Yes.
which one are you like? How are you actually tackling this thing? And it's like the every step is the way to go, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how that works. Like it
Yeah.
just takes time, patience, consistency. Like you just gotta do it.
And
There
one of
is
the
no
biggest
magic
insights
sauce.
from this that I think people miss so much, right? Is that, yeah, you might be able to get there quicker, but there is so much to learn if you just take a step at a time, right? And your end
Yes.
goal will be probably completely different if you do it the right way. And you're going to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
be smarter. You're going to be probably more wealthy, more happy. All of the things then add up if you do it the right way.
Enjoy the journey. If you
Yeah.
go to the final battle too early, the game wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Well, or I mean, I think it's interesting because, Mike and I really like this book called Mastery. And it talks about the importance of like getting 10,000 repetitions in, right?
Yep.
But to use like a simpler quote, the quote that Bruce Lee said, fear the person who has done one kick 10,000 times, not 10,000 kicks one time. And when you talk about the ladder analogy, every rung versus every fifth, well, which one gets you to 10,000 reps faster? And it's that
Right.
persistent daily small bite-sized pieces. The steps matter because those repetitions are what lead to true mastery in a skill. So your day to day can be filled with the creativity portion rather than the doing portion. I think a lot of people miss that.
Yep. And I mean, you
I,
guys have heard over the course of the last hour and a half, right? Like I'm not and have not been over time a remarkably consistent person. Like I've not admittedly, right? Like
yeah,
wasn't in my nature growing up. Like didn't care to work hard, didn't care to
Right.
put the time in outside of video games, right? But like that was like small snippets, right? Like you play a game for 40 hours and you put it down, then you do something else. You're
Hmm.
not playing that game for 4,000 hours
Right.
unless
Right.
it's,
yeah,
it's Diablo. Like
yeah.
Unless you're streaming
Mm.
Elder Scrolls like we did for 2 years.
Ooh,
We put
got a
exactly,
lot of
4,000
reps
hours
in
in that
that, man.
bitch.
exactly,
But yeah,
Yeah.
no,
but
I totally get what you're saying. This is
So
exactly.
great combo.
I got a question for you guys because you made me think about it when you were talking about, is your wife a mentor? Let me ask you this. What would you guys say the difference between a role model and a mentor is?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Whew.
And I would say role model is more where I would consider my wife, like she's somebody that I aspire to
Agree.
act like, and to um be level head, like all of the things and her mannerisms that she does. I want to do more of that. I would say
Agree.
yes, a mentor is more of someone that has been successful in X leadership or something that you want to acquire to do, and they have the mastery and the know-how to help you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I
What do you
agree.
think,
I think
Maddie?
I've had very few mentors over time, like maybe hit or miss, touch and go type of thing.
Yeah.
One that I'll just sort of jump back to, right? 8th grade basketball, one of the best things that I think ever happened to me, ever. Our coach had practices at 7 o'clock on Friday nights in 8th grade.
Ooh,
It
he
was
did
awesome.
that. He did that for a
Looking,
reason.
looking back, right? His son was on the team.
Yeah.
Looking back, one of the best things that ever happened, to be honest. Kept us all as a unit, as a team. Went to, the diner afterwards again, like Maddie, to your point, like we lived in that area where we could do this type of
Yeah.
stuff, right? But like
Yeah.
hit the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours, went to the diner, everybody went home on Friday night. That was it. So that, to me, that's a mentor, even though maybe not at that time.
Right.
But I look
Yep.
back on those things and I'm like, wow, you should be modeling your life after people like this, right? Like
Yeah.
outright, should be modeling your life. These people taught you something and you should model your life after them. Whereas, the other is like something that you aspire to be, but it's sort of, to me, more real time around you where you're integrating with it.
I agree. Yeah, the reason I brought it up is when you were talking about it, I was like, I see a wife as like a role model, the way you were describing it, because she exhibited so many characteristics that you recognize you needed and were lacking in, which is, by the way, the foundation of great relationships, right? Filling in the gaps, that yin yang concept, and that puzzle piece concept. So I think I was thinking about it, and then I was like, what would I say the difference is? And I was just curious what you all came with. And honestly, the way you guys described it, that's precisely what I would agree with, Mike. Your definition was spot on. I liked how both of those are. I think both are important to have in your life, but I do think they're different.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Good point out, Manny. Okay, so take us to the next phase, man. Unless there's something before we get to Web3, because you're dropping a lot of cool knowledge about your founder being a good buddy, and then, dude, I've been staring at this gorgeous freaking artwork the whole time, so I cannot wait to talk about that as well.
All right, montage. Moving forward, left auditing where I met my wife. Lived in Boston for a year. It was under a year, but about a year. Doing some consulting for an administrator, which is like a hedge fund service provider. Probably one of the biggest wake up calls of my life, right? Like totally alone, had never really been too far from home because I didn't go to college away. So like very different experience for me. Walked to Red Sox games as a Yankee fan. That
Tough.
was super interesting, but
Yeah.
thankfully they collapsed that year, which very happy for that.
Not only are you going there, but apparently with a loud mouth too, so that's double interesting.
Again, I'll always go there. But loved it there. Like loved it there. Cleanest city I've probably ever been to. It's incredible. And like lived, if you guys have been to Boston, I lived in the Copley area, which is right where the marathon ends and is a very busy area. And is 1 mile from Fenway Park. And you can walk to the park from where I lived. And so
Love
like
that little shout out, by the way.
walked.
Did you picked up any Bostonian accent?
I
Any
did.
Massachusetts?
I also was like reprimanded at the stadium because, and so that's why, right? And I said, oh, sat down like 5th row, like by myself, because they're way easier than Yankee Stadium. Like you walk in, if you're by yourself, you're on a weekday, like no one, at least at this time, no one's checking your ticket to see where you're sitting, right? I'm in a suit, not a suit, but like collared shirt and slacks
Yeah.
sometimes. I'm walking down, no one's checking my ticket. I sit down, talking to a nice Bostonian. Oh, stadium is lovely. I love it here. And they go, oh. And I'm like, I mean, oh. What do you mean, oh? Like, we're from New York. I'm like, is the accent that heavy? They were like, no. I said stadium. There's only one stadium. This is a pack. And I'm like, excuse me. Lesson learned. Slap. Like, wow.
That's hilarious.
So like I always correct myself now everywhere I go all the time, right? It's never stadium.
Yeah.
There are a couple more, but it's just always funny to me. That's a memory that will live.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But had a great time there. Just like absolutely loved it. Came back, and I'm just gonna fast forward a little, but like started at a hedge fund effectively, right? I did a short stint somewhere, but like started at a hedge fund and have been in funds my whole life. So all of this accounting work experience has been around hedge funds, auditing or doing something else around financial services.
Yeah.
Then started private side of the business right around Hurricane Sandy, actually 2 weeks before Hurricane Sandy.
Wow.
That's the only way I know this, right? Like, I'm not very good with time, but I know like sort of events that happen.
Hmm.
And then I've
Hmm.
been on the private side of funds my whole life, but not a super glamorous. I'm in funds. I'm the ops guy, the accountant. You know, doing audit, tax, and effectively being a service provider to the desk who's making the investments, right? Like that's how I look at this job. No matter if I'm a CFO or I'm a staff accountant at a fund,
Hmm.
you're a service provider to the people who are generating revenue for this business.
Right.
Um, that's just how I look at it. Like
That's an
again,
interesting
stay
way to put
humble.
it. I've never heard it that way.
Right. Stay humble, right? Like you're not if you're working at a hedge fund and you're not the portfolio manager, you're not the number one. Like
Right, right,
Yeah.
right,
doesn't
right,
matter how
Yeah.
cool or good or awesome you are at your job, you're not the number one.
right.
You don't generate any revenue. And that's every business, right? And like
Yeah.
what I learned along the way was like you're not unless I start my own accounting firm, like I'm not gonna be the number one. And you
Right.
gotta be okay with that. Like you have to find ways to A, create value and B, like be good at what you do. Like be the best at what you're doing. And that doesn't mean like the best, but be the best at what you're doing,
Yeah.
just generally,
Yeah.
right? And give it again, going back to that college, give it not the first 18 months, but the latter half of
Right.
college of like
Yeah.
give it that all the time, everything you're doing forever. Like
Yeah, and so that you bring up an interesting point, and is that has you been in the industry for a while? Are you okay not starting an accounting firm being the number one? Is this why Web3 started, or do you like the balance with your family? Like, what's your mindset there?
I guess some are yes, some are no. Like, you know, a little bit of yes, a little bit of no.
Yeah,
Um, I'm okay being where I am at a fund. I'm okay being where I am because I'm not the guy making the investments, but I also have the risk tolerance. And this is something I think people don't understand because they see this glamorous job or somewhat high paying relative to other things, right? The risk tolerance that comes with being in one of these positions as a number one or a number 50
yeah,
is intense. And that does blend well with what we're doing, right? Like being able to stomach a red 20% day, like you need to be able to stomach that, whether it's like in a coin or in a project, like you need to be able to know your core beliefs are like this thing can go to zero tomorrow, and if it's my project I'm going to keep going, and if it's someone else's project like you know root troop that is like one of my core projects that I believe in, I know Stone this team is going to keep going if it's zero or if it's 50 ETH, right?
right.
And so that's something that I've learned just like along the way as a risk tolerance of like, you could get a huge bonus. You could get zero if the world goes away tomorrow. Like, and you worked a whole year for a very modest salary, which I don't think people understand.
I love that insight, and I
Yeah.
totally agree with
That's
it.
huge.
Yeah.
So, so take us through, unless there's anything else you want to touch on. I actually love the Boston snippet because you felt like anything from there is like why you felt you grow. Is it more just the fact that you were independent and it just you were able to grow in that because being on your own, being away from home helped you out a lot in your mindset?
No, having been around my girlfriend, now wife, at work and then leaving and realizing that like you weren't going to be the number one in, you know, 30 minutes. Um, Going to a new place, it was a good refresher to sort of start fresh
Hmm.
and do the things you learned or put into practice the things that, right? Like, again, the reset button, start the game over. That one didn't work a little bit. Go back to it and say, like, we can implement all these things we learned and now see how they work and retest and learn and do this again and then see how it works. And it was a great experience because I wasn't around any positive influences. I wasn't around any negative influences. It was fresh start, clean slate, total go. I knew
Right.
no one.
That's awesome.
So it was a great experience just for that part of the learning.
Yeah. All right, well then take us to Web3, man. Tell us how you found it. Tell
Yeah.
us how you got to the project, and then we'll go from there and talk about the future as well.
Sure. So Probably a lot of stories, but big Gary V fan
Yeah.
generally.
Mm-hmm.
Web3, like invested in Bitcoin, like through GBTC, and then a little bit in Bitcoin, like prior to the Gary V like onboarding experience, right?
Hmm.
Of everybody through VFriends. I'll say it that way. Um, and so had done a little bit of that, like I said, GBTC and some other stuff. But then really got interested on the NFT side. Always was a big collector. Like as a kid, collected basketball cards, which I sort of mentioned, and then like have collected things forever, just forever,
Yeah.
because I like it. There's nostalgia to it. There's many different factors to it. Value's always going to be
Yeah.
one of them. If someone tells you value in collectibles or art or anything is not a thing, they're lying.
Right.
Even if they love the art, they're lying. They know there's some substance underneath that is value.
Right.
Hmm.
And they may not be interested in like executing selling it for value, but there's always value.
Yeah.
Um, but sort of going back, onboarding experience of the Gary V experience, like looked, wanted to do VFriends, was there, had a wallet ready, everything ready to go. I'll say like from December was sort of watching it as things started to ramp all the way through. I think it was like March, and like ETH just went wild, right? And like ran up to like 4,000, and I was like, pass, like
Yeah.
who knows? This is
Hard
more like
pass.
hard pass. Like I'm not gonna. This thing was sitting at whatever it was, like 600, 1,200, wherever ETH was, like before the huge run up. And I'm like, it'll come back down, something will happen, whatever. Like this thing isn't gonna skyrocket overnight. Like millionaires aren't gonna be made in this time period. Um, no big deal. I'll wait. And just sort of like put it down. Watched Mint happen. He had some hiccups during Mint. Watched Mint happen, and then was like, it'll be fine. It minted out, and then everything went like crazy, right? Like even that, like forget apes and everything else, which we missed. That went crazy, like immediately to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ETH, and I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. And me being at a fund, like I was interested in the trading and the data aspect of this, right? Like
Yeah.
go on OpenSea, you can see the tangible data, and this is what like people always ask me who are not interested in Web3. And they're like, yeah, but it's worth, like a friend of mine that was at a fund, yeah, but you can't sell it. And I'm like, but you can, and you
Yeah.
can go on actively right now onto now many different websites and see not only a transaction, but all of the transaction history on any given token. Um, and so just sort of put it down after VFriends, but that was my onboarding experience, right? Like that was the quiet onboarding experience because I did nothing. I was inactive, but watched and
Hmm.
failed in that period.
Dude, I'll marry you.
Um,
I was doing the same thing, convincing Matt yet again that this was the next big thing. And I was like, bro,
Bro.
these things, I think it like Dutched it. Didn't he do a Dutch auction or something?
they went backwards. Yes, they
And I
went
think
backwards.
some
Yeah.
of them were going for like a half ETH, maybe.
Yes, yeah. Like
Maybe.
most of them hit floor. Like the
Dude.
non-elites hit floor.
So they were, what
And
was
people,
floor? 0.3, 0.2?
I forget what it was, but like they hit. I know at least some of them hit floor, and I was like,
Right. And I remember
Uh-huh.
saying that same thing. Like, at that point, I think ETH was like $1,500. And I was like, Maddie and my other buddy Dave, I was like, bro, we should buy one of these things.
Yep.
But I'm the cuckoo
Yeah.
of the
And I
crew.
didn't even, well, first of all, that was your 9,000th idea. And so,
It was a
sorry,
good
we were a
idea.
little skeptical.
Maddie,
That
you
being
gotta
said,
throw it at the
but
wall.
but I did say, I remember asking Mikey, I said, because here's the thing that bums me about it, is I didn't say, had nothing to do with crypto. I just said, how much money do I need to give you so we can do this? And you said something, ETH, and I was like, no. I don't know what any of that is. How much dollars? How many dollars do you need? And Mike, do you remember? You said it's like $300-400 and we can get one of these.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was like, oh, you know what? I can do that. And we just never really pushed it, never
We just
followed
never
it,
pushed it.
And I remember looking back and like, dang man, I didn't even say no. Like I actually said yes.
I think he did
And
say
we just
yes.
didn't, and we just
I
didn't do it.
think Dave was the
Burns.
one that said no. Those bitches went up to 20 ETH, which is a smooth 80
Yeah, I
grand at
know.
ETH of $4,000. But
Yeah,
okay,
well,
so that is your
what are you gonna
passive.
do?
I had the same exact story. So what's the
right?
active phase? How did you get actually into the active phase?
A couple months later, I'm doing card breaks with a guy, not me breaking cards, but watching breaks and just enjoying it, right? Like something I was enjoying at the time, like didn't have a lot of free time myself to go buy boxes of like baseball cards and was just watching breaks. He had gotten into a project later in like I'll say like late July, early August of that year, so a couple months later now, right? Um and it was super cheap, like I don't know, like point oh 0.02, point oh 0.04, whatever it was. And I was like, well, wallet's set up already. Like I own ETH because I have a Coinbase account. I have all these other things. I'm already there. All I need to do is do this weird thing called MetaMask, which I have no idea what it is. And right, and move this money into this random space and get going. And so I did. I figured it out, right? You take your time, you learn, you take your L's, and you figure out what you do right and what you do wrong. Um, and I bought these like random sloths. Did those total zero. Did a bunch of other stuff at the time, like quick other stuff. Um, all like semi-derivative projects that I had no idea what I'm doing at all.
Right.
Right, like I aped in like totally solo. Like Matt at the time was like, gonna pump the brakes. Like I'll see you when I see you on that thing. Like down the road a little bit. You get there, you get there, you tell me what the island looks like, and I'll swim across the river. Which
Uh,
which in fairness was good to him. Um, and then I come across this project called Chill Frogs. And Chill Frogs, I'll just say, is a bunch of BTC maxis, right? Like a bunch of Bitcoin maxis. I didn't know any better, had no idea at the time. And it was my first like, oh my god, like the world's changing experience, right?
right.
Things are getting bought for like 20 ETH randomly, like from a wallet nobody knows, like don't understand anything. And I'm just like, oh man, like this is it. Like I need to buy a lot of these things because like
Oh
the whole
no.
world's gonna change. Yeah, I didn't go like totally wild, but I bought like I don't know, like 8, right? But like ran up
Hmm.
from like point oh 0.09, let's just say, all the way through like point 0.7, right? Like spanned my like range of like what I was buying.
Yeah.
So nothing crazy. Um, but that was a solid like month and a half, 6 week experience, I'll say, of like real fun though. That was the first time I saw community building.
Yeah.
That was the first time like those things were actually happening in the project, right? It
Right.
wasn't just like price go up. It was these things are happening and I can see other benefits than you'll retire next year because
Right.
you bought an ape, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I saw different things. I saw, roadmaps. I saw people outside in different projects. Now I started to see like sappy seals pop up. I started to see, penguins pop up, all these other things, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, Pop up. I'm listening to not Twitter spaces at the time, but clubhouses, right?
Right.
And you're listening to these
Hmm.
things and you're like trying to figure out what's going on. You're like jumping into a random space and a dude's launching a project and you're like, oof, do I ape right now into this thing that minted like 4 out of a 10,000 collection because it's going to be the next thing?
Right.
You just take your L's and you learn, right?
Yeah.
Um, did those things, but like stayed with it because to the Madden online gameplay experience, this isn't about the you failed at this thing. This is about the let's take a step back and see what you've learned over time and say like, is this L worth quitting, or do you go find the things that make sense,
Yeah.
not only for the space, but for you, right? Like, where do you fit
Hmm.
now
Hmm.
in the puzzle? Going back to the like, I'm an accountant at a hedge fund, I'm not the number one. Well, I'm not the first person in NFTs, I'm not the number one. Go figure out where your puzzle piece is in this grand scheme of things.
Ooh, interesting.
Um,
I like how you applied that life lesson.
yeah, and so like that's again like that's just sort of how I thought about it, right? Like that's how I thought about it, and sort of just traveled through the space, found a couple projects, did a couple things. The big win, so I'll say this, which is probably on the monetary side, this is for sure what got me hanging around. Um, so I bought a doodle shortly after mint.
Ooh.
Um, Hugely lucky. Was talking to one of the Chill Frogs community members at the time, and like you don't know any better, spouting all this stuff off. But like I looked at the project and I'm like, oh, these things are A, flying, but like B, art's cool. Like everything I bought to date, my kids, who knows if they're interested in, right? Like
Right.
hadn't really approached the subject. This is, let's just say 2.5 years ago now, right? So my
Right.
daughter is like 4.5, right? Like four and
Uh-huh.
a half, 5. So like not totally there yet on like being able to like really get it with me.
Right.
And so like I just wasn't there. Also, it's my oldest child, so like you treat them differently than you treat your second, like insofar as like what you expose your first, then your second and your third and your fourth child to. I only have two, but like just generally.
Yeah.
You A
Yeah.
become more desensitized over time, but like B, what you want to show them is just different, right? Like your
Right.
first child gets
Yeah.
everything first, but your second child gets everything earlier than the first because they're the second. Um, and so, back to this, bought a doodle and just only up, right? Like only up. Um, and just like loved it. Bought it for like 1.9, watched it go to point 0.8 actually, and then hold my seat. I'm like, nope. You bought it because you believed in it. I only bought one, but you bought it because you believed in it, and then it just took off, right?
Right.
And so I've had that guy forever. Fast forward, really got into like the Twitter scene subsequent to that.
Hmm.
Like was doing almost community only building with Chill Frogs, um, the whole time I just discussed, and then really found Sappy Seals, really found all these other projects, communities,
Yeah.
um, through the latter half of that year. Right, bought my first seal, um, New Year's Eve of that year for like 0.33. Was very happy. Got all the way there, and then have bought other things along the way, and just to sort of again like click montage, right? But like Ruse is my number one holdings outside of where we'll go in a second, which is this project and
Yeah.
what we personally are doing. But like couldn't believe more in stone, but like what the whole situation is, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I own like everything in the ecosystem. I own some frogs, I own a llama, I own this, right? Like I touch all the pieces of the one circular ecosystem,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Um, but like I think this is the most tangible business, and for now, outside of what Pons is doing, and so it's went in on Mint and have not wavered since.
Right.
Um, just believer in what he's doing. Um, Fast forward and or sort of during this time, so Matt meets a guy named Mike. They both worked at a small company called Disney together. Um,
Well, they have great
Haven't.
names as well too.
Ha-
Yep,
yeah.
Matt and Mike, exactly. I told you guys this. So Matt and I have very, very many similarities to the two of you. Just like how it sort of all operates, but it's interesting. So Matt meets Mike. We're just sort of chatting one day, and he's like, "Oh, I met this guy Mike, like super smart, like understands crypto, understands this, like really gets it." And he does.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible to watch for me being like not very technical in this space. Um More like generically data driven, and him being much more like technical. Like he gets it. He's read white papers. I skim white papers, right? We'll say it that way. Um so he meets Mike. Mike by trade. So Matt's been in media his whole career. Which you guys will get. Um, Started at like a media firm, then went to Disney. Has been doing media advertising since.
Right.
Met Mike at Disney. Met Mike at Disney, and sort of says like, "Oh, I'm talking to Mike. Like, we're thinking about doing this thing. Like, we need a business guy. Like, and so the thing I sort of glossed over during the time of hedge funds is I've started and closed a number of funds, right? Like, so I've opened businesses, I've
Yeah.
closed businesses at scale, registered funds with the SEC. Like, I've done a lot of things that like I just sort of read and like went through the pages real quick
Right.
and gave you guys some high level. And then going all the way back to like newspapers, right? Like I've run effectively small businesses my whole life, like I just
Right.
have.
Right.
And so and Matt just knows that from history. And it's just like need an accountant, want you there. you're in the Web3 space already, like you're doing all these other things, and to me, like in my head, like I'm one day gonna have an apes trade and be done, right? Like that's me.
That's what you're
And he's
shooting
like,
for, but now you got a
right, and he's like,
project.
he's a step off the gold medal, like step off, and come down here and play the game with everybody else,
Yeah.
and like be a part of society. And he had this idea, and so what I skipped was Mike is an artist by trade. Mike went to art school and has a lot of connections in the art world, right? Like in the actual art world. So the goal that mission statement that we came up with was really helping artists enter Web3, right? And I think now probably a little bit overused, but and maybe some other things I glossed over, but like Mike has real artists that like he has a crypto background and connections to these people that he went to school with, has developed relationships with, all of these things. My wife is from a family of artists, a family of artists. And so like her mom paints, her dad runs a marketing firm that like he's an artist by trade. It just so happens he runs a marketing firm. Like her brother can like draw himself with no mirror, like by hand. Incredible.
Wow.
Like I draw stick figures.
Right.
I do numbers.
Yeah.
I draw stick figures. Like the most I got to was like a colored sheet of paper in high school because I was bored, and like some S's on a sheet of paper, right? Like that's it. But always have had an appreciation for it in all forms, Other things I glossed over, like we did the theater a lot because I grew up in New York, right? Like all these other things, theater a lot, but like we saw musicals during Christmas,
Right.
and so like I've always had these like weird appreciations for art because I've been around it, and it clicked to me. I was like, oh, like this, yeah, this works. Like this works. Like we not only can help them in the space, but like we can educate them. We can do it safely, and if they don't want to be educated, we can handle it safely, and they are not at risk to make all the mistakes I just made over the last 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either on the investing side getting rugged, or like also hiring bad people to do a contract, doing all these other things, right? Like these mistakes that people don't see.
Yeah.
Right? Like people see the rugs. People don't see failed projects because like somebody hired a bad dev and the thing went sideways, and they had a really good community and a really good situation and it didn't work because one thing on the back end.
Oh, it
Yeah.
happens all the
Whatever,
time, right? And
whatever
people
it
don't
was.
talk about it a lot. Yeah.
Right. Going full circle, that wasn't the dev's fault. You did poor planning.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I
And
like
so
it. I like it.
and so looking at that, it's like we can help these people. We can help these people. This isn't about money. Like, sure, we'll make money. Like I said about art, right? Sure. It's about we can onboard these people. And so we did a small Nifty Gateway project with an artist called named Abe Morell. I want to say October, November of this year. So if you go back and look at the ownership Twitter, that was our first project. So rewind a little. So we did this thing, started in about March, did nothing, like bear market sort of hit, right? And everybody has these lofty goals of we're gonna make X dollars, this, and we were like, everybody needs to pump the brakes. We're not going to launch everybody into a cliff. Like we're not gonna just like throw you out into a cliff. A, bad name for us. B, you and like Abe, if you go look, and when you come back to this, we'll all come back, but look at Abe's history. Abe is like a renowned artist. This isn't a pseudo Web3 guy that just like sort of popped up. Abe's in, huge galleries, huge showings. Like it's incredible. And trusted us with his art, and I'm not gonna go throw him into a brick wall, right? Like I'm not gonna do that. So pivoted. We were like thinking about doing projects, thinking about getting a dev. Pivoted, did Nifty for his drop, curated drop. Worked great. Modest raise for him, but like proof of concept, test, first project, did it. So that's sort of the arc of like how we got to like right pre Galaxy of Color.
So
Okay.
the I'm gonna have to step away for like a couple minutes here tend to some family business. But one of the things I want to get before we go into the project is you said a lot of awesome stuff there. And one of the things I really liked what you said was like a lot of these failed projects are again planning, right? Because there's this hype element. You're trying to make a ton of money, and I think in everybody's in the back of the mind, well, this shit's gonna end sometime, right? So I got to get mine before it all blows up.
Yeah.
Any other tidbits of info going through this process that you would love to share with the community or anybody that watches this? Like, what are the top 2 to 3 bullet points of like what you learned and what you look out for now?
Be true to you. Like, just be true to you, right? No matter what all of this is, you got to just be true to what you are. That's going to be to me, that's the most important thing. Like, and I didn't get into stories about work, but like, I've had my outright like yelling at people in the middle of the office
Mm-hmm.
because I don't believe that. And I'll just say it like, I don't believe that people need to be in the office 5 days a week to be successful. I do
Right.
believe they need to be in the office, but I don't believe they need to be in the office because you say so,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so like that is a real sticking point for me of like be true to yourself
Yeah.
and stick up for it, no, at all cost,
Yeah.
like at all costs, even if it sometimes cuts a couple fingers off.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Anything else of like what to look out for, or how you interpret what you think a good or a bad project is?
Good or bad project is accountability, right? I think, and this is what I was going to say when you sort of said it a couple seconds ago, but like those people at the top, are they taking accountability for what's going on? Or are they randomly vanishing when cancel culture comes to get them? Or something else happens? That person that vanishes, probably not your guy or your woman. The people who are like out there pounding the table saying either I'm not wrong, this is why, or I made a mistake, I'm taking ownership of my mistake or
Yeah.
our mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That's the person you want to be around.
Yeah.
To me, that's the person you want to be around,
I
right?
love it, man.
Um,
It's
that's the
good.
big one for me. Like, because those people will fix it. Might not be tomorrow, but those people will continue to persevere at whatever it is that they want and fix it.
Yeah. I love it. And so
It's
take us
good.
through, because and then this kind of like morphs into the galaxy of color, but um I'm assuming you're taking this narrative, because I do like the idea, like, yes, have there been a lot of people that are like, I'm going to introduce artists into Web3? It's been done a
Mhm.
thousand times, right? But I like your angle of accountability. So this is going through the Galaxy or Color project? Can you just, I think what I'm getting at is, can you continue to talk about that narrative as you take us through what is Galaxy of Color and your project as a whole?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a ton of lessons that I've learned in this process, right? Like up until now in the Web3 space, they're personal learning lessons that I'm like, well, this is my personality set, and I learned this because I handled it X and the result was Y.
Right.
Whereas like launching a project, that's a much more linear experience for
Mm-hmm.
everyone, and you can sort of see what mistakes you made.
Okay. So
Um,
let's do this. I'm gonna step away.
yeah.
Let's start with this. Give us the 2 to 3 minute elevator pitch of what Galaxy of Color is. And then after that, I would love to go through the process of creating a project and, give us the top 2 to 3 learning lessons or things that maybe surprised you, or things that you want to share with people that are thinking about building a project.
Sure. We coming back, or am I staying with
So
Maddie?
Maddie's gonna take you through this. I'll be
Yeah.
back. You roll.
Awesome. Galaxy of Color. So I can't leave this out.
Okay.
So Mike, we're just so we have a stable of artists, right? Videographers, um, painters, hand drawn artists, like all these other artists that we have. We know we have these relationships, right? Like my mother-in-law is a painter. Um, but like we're not just going to help the artists we know. That's not a sustainable business for us, right?
Yeah.
Um, Mike's out searching Twitter one day, finds this AI artist, color out of place, um, 800 followers, thinks nothing of it. Hey, love your art. Like, what's up? Cold call,
Yeah.
right? Effectively cold call.
Yeah.
Um, Comes back. He's like, hey, sort of interaction pitch, like, we're ownership. This is what we do. Like, this is what we are doing. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to work with you. Okay, cool. Didn't think anything of it. I may be getting the story a little bit jumbled, but to me, like, at the time, no super concrete plan of like, okay, we're gonna take this guy and we're gonna do this, right? Like, we didn't have a plan. We're just
Hmm.
like sourcing constant relationships. Like, that's what you have to do in a business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so, needless to say, I think subsequently Mike stumbles on his Instagram account, which has 115,000 followers, which is like, to me, hysterical, right? And this is something someone else said to me. Of course, Instagram doesn't translate to Web3 insofar as sales go, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
Still
Definitely gets
influence.
definitely gets us excited, right? Like,
Yeah.
that means there are eyes watching. There are
Hmm.
eyes watching. Um, so I'm not gonna give too much background on Color, but like, great guy. We get to know him a little bit, several meetings, definitely wants to work with us. And we're seeing as time goes, this is like November-ish time frame.
Hmm.
Um, AI art start to really pop up. Like, just it's starting to come to the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
And while we're holding this other stable of artists, of painters and videographers and this all sort
Hmm.
of off, you sort of need to assess what makes sense. And it's just like, oh, I think this is the right time to get Color sort of like right to the front of the line, and we need to do this. Um, and we really put our foot to the gas like quick. And that's some of the beauty about AI is he can do things very quickly too, right? And we didn't want to do, I'm not looking to do 10,000. It's not AI doesn't, I don't think AI is suited for that, right? Like, you don't want 10,000 of this art. Um but also, like, I didn't think in the current market that's a good sell. Like, not me, but
Yeah.
I say me, we don't think that's a good idea. All four of us.
Okay.
Um So we decided on a super pared down, curated project, decided on A21. So happens it's the end of my handle, has nothing to do with that. I joked and said it. Um, there's some Bitcoin reference in it that Mike can explain better than I can. Um, so there's a lot of different meanings in it.
Sure.
None for good reason, all for it's a good curated number of photos, images.
Okay.
Um, and so we all just really hit the gas pretty quickly from like early mid December through like January.
Hmm.
And you learn a lot going through that process, right? I had been, I'll say, on teams, not ever technically on teams, but I had helped a couple people with mints prior to ownership, but really in a very, very light capacity of like, cool, I'll send a couple tweets with no influence. Yes, I'll talk to people on everybody's behalf, but like, my name's not on it. I'm not getting paid for it. We're doing
Yeah.
nothing. I'm just helping friends because I want to help friends and also learn in this process. You realize how quickly sort of things need to happen in order to make things efficient.
For
Um,
sure.
so marketed the project. Um, Matt and I really marketed. Mike is a doer. Like, he doesn't want to be on Twitter grinding every day, sending GMs and responding to people. Like, do it if he has to. But that's not right. Everybody fits in the puzzle. Like, that's not
Yeah.
his puzzle piece.
Yeah.
And Matt
I
and I
know
are
that
just
feeling.
like, right, Matt and I are doing it and we're just grinding it. And I smile and I enjoy it and I enjoy my interactions. Like, and I enjoy them. The same
Yeah.
point I made earlier about like wanting to help people, like, because I want that interaction with people. I don't, I just want it.
Yeah.
And, so we market this project, and I'm, again, probably not doing it justice. So maybe we'll go back a little bit later when you ask questions. But, um, so we deal with Color. He's great. Things I didn't really say about the art itself because I'm just like talking through. AI generated, but he has a process, right? Like this isn't someone who puts a bunch of text in, sends it in, says, "Give me 800 images." We click and we go.
Yeah.
And there was a really interesting timing, but there was a really good piece today. Somebody released a YouTube about their success with our mint and then
Hmm.
compared it to this like weird Pokemon AI art that they also minted like recently and were like, I can tell all the differences between how curated this and that are because, right? Like they have
Yeah.
traits, we have terms of service on our agreements, like we have all these other things. The images that we use fit the box in OpenSea. And one of the things that are a trait in our collection is what type of image it is, right? Like portrait, whatever, wide, all of those things, which like I appreciate, but I have no idea about. Color
Yeah.
understands them. Mike understands those things, and it becomes art, not a image
Yeah.
in the system.
So let's do this because when Mikey left, he's back now. Mikey, we've not done the pitch. We've just been talking about it. Uh, Give us the pitch. And this is important for people to hear who may find this after the fact.
Yep.
What is the 2-minute pitch, Galaxy of Color?
Hand curated AI art by someone who's been doing this for many, many years before it was cool. And then storytelling around that as we get to it. So we're trying, right? I work with two marketing guys, real time interactive storytelling. So we're going to build a story using the AI. Like, know what you have and use it, right? If you have a painter, use his paintings or her paintings. If you
Hmm.
have someone who has done AI for years and is great at it, not good, great at it, use those tools to make your community. And so the art side of it is this amazing hand curated art
Yeah.
after the system does its fabulous thing. The storytelling side is going to be real time interactive storytelling based on stories that the AI comes up with. And then either we have a voting mechanism or something else
Awesome.
to sort of
Okay.
curate a story around factions, which I didn't get into, but like every single person in the galaxy of color, one of their traits is a faction, color junkies, architects, etc. Um, and then within that, each person has a story, right? And so the beauty about this is you don't need to handwrite 800, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 stories.
Right.
You can do them all. You can do them all at once.
Yeah.
And then if you don't like 200 of them, you can go back and rewrite just the 200 you don't like and come up, right? And sort of iterate. And you get to a certain point and everybody votes. Do you like it? Do you not? How does it work? Move on. And progress the story like down the road,
Hmm.
right? There's infinite opportunity and possibility to where this can go as a story itself.
No, I love it,
Okay.
man. And I love the fact that he's already grounded in the AI space.
Yeah.
Um, so we've
He's,
been
he's got
taught.
a real history and he's got a real history, visual FX, other things. Like he showed us small alpha. He showed us some animated AI today that
Oh,
is incredible, like blending through so many images, almost like a flip book
Hmm.
of all these images, A in the collection, B not in the collection, all these things, right? Um, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
wow,
It's
that's
incredible.
awesome. And
Yeah.
so I think this is how we can kind of, Maddie has a hard stop, and believe it or not, we've been talking for well over 2 hours at this point.
Crazy. And I questioned you guys. I was like, there's no way you're getting 2 hours out of me.
Bro, we
Mm.
we could get two more. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't want to not be able for you to talk. We have two quick questions at the end. They're not any brain busters, but I want to talk about let's talk about as a holder, what do you get and what do the next 6 to 12 months look like as for the project?
Yeah, so the thing, right, about us being art driven is it's art. And I'm gonna sell it as art. Like you get art.
Yeah.
You're going to get a story to go with the art, but you're going to get art. You're not going to get utility. You're not going to get all these magical things that we promise you and don't get delivered for 6 or 12 months. We're going to do stuff, but it's going to be built around the art. It's going to be built around the story. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do physical prints because they're going to be amazing. And we've been testing some sizing and different physical prints. And we've already put this out in the Discord, but like we need to up-res every image to get them to bigger sizes. So if
Right.
people want to print huge ones, we need to up-res every image. So we're doing that. You know, coffee table books, like these are all things that are on the table, but I'm not selling something that is a pipe dream.
Yeah.
I'm too practical as an accountant to come in here and snake oil somebody and be like, this is what you're going to get in 6 to 12. It's not happening. We sell art. And if you look at the art, you know why we sell art. That's sort of my thing.
I love it, dude. It's so refreshing
like
to
that.
hear you say that, to be honest.
Concise.
Because
Well, and listen, you
most
started
people
that
don't say that.
Yeah, no, Mike, you nailed it. And listen, you said it back in the day. You were selling candy and trading basketball cards, and you told us collectibles is a thing for you. At the end of the day, a lot of people resonate with that. You're not pretending for this to be anything else. It's a collectible, right?
Yep,
And you buy it because you
exactly.
like it. There are people that collect figurines. They're not pretending that there's going to be anything other than the fact that you get to enjoy that collectible. And here's the thing: when they're done well, they do speak for themselves. That is definitely the case. Mike and I always talk about Marvel masterpieces, man, but like that was, that effect works. If it's good, people will
It
buy it.
does.
Bro,
People are excited
I
about it.
bought 4 unopened packs. They're sitting in my desk. I can't wait to eventually open them someday. Or maybe I'll never open them because I'm just that excited about them.
Always retain the optionality. If I can
I love
say,
it. I love it.
that's tough, right? Like that's me. Like haven't launched my space doodle, haven't done all these. Always retain the optionality.
I like it.
That's
I
me.
like it. Even though it burns you, it's burnt us many a times, but the options are nice to
100%.
have.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to add about the project or the future before we kind of wind it down here? It's been an amazing conversation, so many little snippets. So just want to thank you for that. And we have a kind of a question about how the shows goes, and we'll do our closing comments, but more about your project or anything else that you want to talk about the future of Web3 and you.
Yeah, not really. Just super humbled, right? Like we didn't talk about the mint process, which was like super slow, didn't over allocate, all those types of things. Um, just like super humbled by when the art was revealed, the response. Um, and so that's I'm just humbled by what happened when the art was released, right? If you look at the Twitter and you look at pre-release, most of what we released outside of like the couple of faction photos that I sent you guys to use,
Yeah.
Yeah.
are all B-sides which didn't make the collection. Generated 10,000, pared it down to let's just say 1,000 out of the 10,000 to even be worthwhile to use. Again, curating everything.
Right.
And then selected A21 out of let's just say 1,000. It wasn't exactly that number. And then took let's just say 20 to market with that weren't in the collection because we didn't want to give away NFTs publicly that we're gonna end up minting, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that was it.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, congrats on the mint. It's sold out. Got a little hype there, which is awesome. It's well deserved because the art is beautiful. And to kind of wind it down, 2 questions. One, do you have any questions for us? Because we just peppered you with questions for over 2 hours. If you don't, totally cool. We can move on. Plenty of people have not, but we want to give you that courtesy because you just crushed it for over 2 hours.
Oh, no questions. No questions.
Awesome. And
I've
then,
always been bad at interviewing because everybody's like, your turn to ask questions. I'm like, I got nothing for you. Like, if I didn't want to be sitting in the seat, I wouldn't be sitting in the seat.
There you go.
dude, that is a little New York coming out you right there. I like that a lot.
I like it.
Straight into the point. You ain't effing
Some
around.
Jersey.
New York and Jersey right there. And then finally, our last question is, we like to get feedback about how you thought. I'm sure you've been on thousands of Twitter spaces at this point. You've been in the Web3 place for a while. You've seen other AMAs and shows like this. love to get your feedback on how you thought tonight went on the MLC so compared to what else you've experienced in the space.
Incredible how you guys know how to draw the right questions out, right? Like to me, like pseudo nervous coming in, like just because why not? Like because you don't do this every day. Like I'm not a TV personality.
Right.
But like that beginning for me was like super choppy of like, sure, here's my childhood, here's my click, 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 let's get the galaxy of color, right? And you like, cool, now we're gonna rewind the VHS all the way back to the beginning and all that stuff you missed, that's what we're gonna catch. So that to me, just incredible how you guys know how to draw it out.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks.
It's a talent. It's an art, right? It's not like you got to practice that thing. It's not something that like just happens when you turn a camera on and just do it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. That's
thank you.
That's the feedback that we're looking for. And Maddie and I always say this. What we didn't realize we were doing when we were playing video games to bots in an empty chat for 2 years was sharpening the sword on how to figure out how to navigate a long format conversation.
Exactly.
And to your point, I think it's nice for us and fortunate that not a lot of people know how to do that. And it's, you can't just do it overnight. So it means a lot that you felt that because that's exactly what we're going for. So I appreciate that feedback, man, a lot. It means the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good.
Of course.
And Maddie, I'll let you say your closing comments. I'll say mine, and then we will call it a night. And dude, as you continue to grow, you are part of the MLC fam. You're always welcome back. And I'm, just super excited that you came and thank you so much. So, Maddie, go ahead.
Well, a couple things. One, obviously, we found out pretty early on that we're kindred spirits in how we operate. You know what I mean? And so I really thank you for giving us the background you did because I love it when I see things and hear things, and it's like I know what that's like, and you see how it leads to who you are today, and even just the way you said it. I mean, again, I just repeat it again from lollipops and basketball cards to understanding collectibles to then not apologizing about what you're trying to do in this collection. It's a breath of fresh air. And ironically, or maybe as some type of manifest destiny, your goal back then, which was surprising to Mikey and I listening to it when you said what you were doing with candy and basketball cards, you said you were doing it for attention. There was an element of attention there. And what's wild is you're still doing that. And it's cool to see how that's been monetized. And so I think props to that, right? Because it's a skill that you have developed and it's a skill that this space needs. And so what I would end with is for me, we talked about what's the difference between a mentor and a role model. And I think you are establishing yourself as a role model for this space. And that's step one. If one day the goal is to be a mentor in this space. And so I think that's really cool, man. Props.
Appreciate that.
You bet.
And Maddie always slays his closing comments. I always like to say everything he just said because it's always good. But a couple things that stood out to me, and I say this with so much gratitude, man. I just love what we do because it's so cool to see people from all over the world open up, and it takes a special someone to be able to do that in a long format. You were super vulnerable there at times, and like that means the world to us because our show would not be as good if it wasn't for you. So like you are, over 50% of why this show was a good show. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Two, I feel like I am a friend of yours now because I've learned about you and I have very similar life experiences of loving video games, having my aha moment, having my wife being my mentor / role model, however we want to define that. And you're a good dude, man. I can tell you're a good dude. And having you part of the MLC family means the world to us. And just thank you for your time. And like I said, man, this is the beginning of a friendship. We always want to continue to win and grow together because I guarantee you us as leaders in owning a media company, we're not going anywhere, and we will continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're here for you, man, and can't just wait to kick ass together.
Appreciate it. No, I feel the same way. So that's great. I'm glad. Start of new friendships is always a good thing.
Hell
You
yeah,
bet.
brother.
You bet.
And with that being said, people, we've had another successful midlife crisis show Tuesday night. Thursday, we got Bongi coming in. No, it's not Bongi. Why did I say Bongi? Because I'm looking at his name in the chat. We've got Bongalo coming in, who's the other half of CK to Builders Block. He's been an alpha car in the space for a long, long, long time. And for the first time ever, Friday, Mikey and Maddie throwing down a Twitter space. We're not happy about it, probably because we already talk for hours upon hours on end. But as a media company, we realize we need to grow our brand. And right now, the space to be is Twitter Spaces. We're going to do something different, though. It's going to be an hour. It's going to be short, concise, and we're going to have a well-formatted Twitter space. And it's not going to be 4 hours of talking about nothing. Maddie and I don't operate that way. Get excited. We can't wait to see you all.